You are listening to The Bose Knows. I'm your host, Mr. Bose, and today we'll be talking to the Social Studies Department in our Social Studies Ask Me Anything podcast. In the studio with me today, I have some of those guests. Welcome and thank you for joining me. Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
I'm Mr. Weeks.
I'm Miss Weaver.
And I'm Mr. Rothschild.
Welcome and thank you for joining me. So, podcast starts off with the same couple of questions. First one being, what is your favorite subject or topic in school? And it can either be as when you were a student or your favorite subject or topic to teach as a teacher.
My favorite subject was history for sure, all throughout school. And I'm a history major. Went to college to study history. So,
when I was in school, it changed every couple years. When I was really young, it was mostly social studies, and then it was math, and then we brought in letters to the math, and that didn't really work for me. But then I studied anthropology and linguistics in college, so I'm really enjoying being back in the social studies world.
Mine was economics and history when I was in high school and college, and a little bit of math.
Very good. So next question is your favorite QI story or tradition?
I think I enjoy the pep rallies a lot. I think that's something that's kind of developed over the last several years and has been really good for school culture. I kind of enjoy seeing everybody getting so into that, and I feel like we have more of a school culture now than we used to. It's great to see the students taking pride in QI.
So I just got here, so I don't really know too much about like what is versus isn't tradition. But one thing I've seen that comes out like every pep rally that I just think is really fun is where some of the kids have like adopted an unofficial mascot for their classes, and that is just so funny to me. Just all the lore that they build around like Sid the Sloth and Donkey. It's great.
I would say my favorite moment here, aside from when I used to coach volleyball and we were winning the middle school championships all the time, would be when you, Ian, took over the pep rallies. That was really, really unique, and it was a great addition to what we do here at QI.
Well, thank you. So those are some fun things for sure. Next question is, if you could have coffee with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
My grandmother. Absolutely. We used to have coffee every morning at her place on the beach.
See you, Weaver.
Okay, sure. Probably Dolly Parton. I love Dolly Parton, which all of my students know.
9 to 5.
Well, yeah, like not only has she written some like really spectacular music, and she's written for a lot of other artists too, but also just like the work that she does outside of her music without ever compromising like the fact that she is very much like she's very much a Southerner, and this is the background that she came from. It's like really small town, and she created the Imagination Library, and she does so much work to like contribute to the rest of the world that I just think I've always felt like she's a really excellent representation of like the South and Southern culture. So I would love to meet her.
I don't know. There are a lot of people probably, but I would think that Abraham Lincoln. Honestly, I think my students kind of pick up on that I'm a fan of Lincoln, and I would just want to be able to see what he was actually like as a person. There's a lot of kind of mystique, and he's the legendary president, and it would just be neat to ask him questions and see what he was like as a person. So.
Very good coffee conversations there. Last question before we get into talking about social studies specifically is quality, integrity, respect. Which one and why?
Respect for me. I think respect goes both ways, from the teacher to the students and the students to the teachers. As long as you have respect, anything educational is possible, in my view.
I think mine would probably be integrity, because I feel like you can get a lot of respect through showing integrity, and also like showing integrity shows respect for those around you as well and for the work that you're doing. And even if something that you're working on, it's not going to turn out fantastic the first try, it's a lot better than just pulling it from somewhere else or not even trying and not using that integrity. So I think like it's a good base to build up from, so it'll allow you to achieve the others and really anything else.
I would also say integrity is really important. To me, that one kind of sticks out as the most important. All we have is our reputation kind of, and, taking pride in our work and being honest about our education is really important, I think.
Very good. So getting into it, my first question is it history? Is it civics? Is it social studies? What is the subject? What do you consider yourselves?
It's all of the above, I think. I mean, it's,
All interchangeable?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, civics relies on a lot of stuff that I cover in U.S. history, and what I cover leads up to what, Mr. Weeks teaches.
Uh-huh.
I think all of it really feeds into the field of anthropology as a whole. Like it's the science of people and of humans, whether that's our history, what we're doing now, the different ways that we choose to organize ourselves, and the why behind all of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. So we had a listener submission for a question, and their question was, "What is your favorite your favorite history or social studies fact?"
Wow. I think that it would have to deal with our founding fathers and when they put together Washington, D.C., how it was oriented towards Masons and the Mason principles, and just it's just one of those things where that just kind of outlaid democracy and provided everything that we have today.
I think probably just how weird history and social studies really is, because I mean, humans are weird. Like the fact that there's this event that we study called the Defenestration of Prague, where literally official government representatives were thrown out a window because people didn't like what they had to say. They were fine. But also, like, Thomas Jefferson created the swivel chair and was the first prominent American to like macaroni and cheese. He also found the first dinosaur fossil in North America, actually. But he didn't know that's what it was.
I don't know if this would really fall under fact or not, but one of the things I enjoy about history and social studies in general is just the parallels that you can draw between things that have happened in the past. Like right now in international history, we're studying the Spanish Civil War, and there are so many similarities with what was happening in that conflict in the 1930s and what is happening in Ukraine right now with foreign intervention and all these different factions fighting one another in Ukraine. So that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about history, and I guess it's somewhat based on fact. So.
I think I would agree with that. I had one of my favorite classes in college was a history of technology class, and it was a combination of like looking at technological advances but putting it into the context of history. Like why was the Watt steam engine invented in the first place, and then what did that then change about human history? And it was just really fascinating to look at that Industrial Revolution era of like why did people want to build these machines in the first place, and then what happened to it after the fact.
Yeah.
Awesome. So why don't you, if you want to, share with our listeners a little bit of your story and how you became a teacher, or how did you end up here?
Okay, I'll go first. I worked in the business sector. I was a general manager for 2 or 3 hotels, Hilton, Days Inn, Marriott, and also in the food and beverage business. And it was a great job when I was single, but when I got married and started having kids, I had to look for something else to do. Started working for Coca-Cola as an account manager, moved up to a district manager, and that was even taking more time. So, my dad was a teacher, my mom was a teacher, my grandmother's a teacher, my sister's a teacher. So I figured maybe I got it in my blood, and a friend of mine who was the dean at the time of Palaca High School, Karen Hughes, saw my dad while she was walking the ravines, and I was in between jobs, and she said, "Tell Jerry to come down and see me." Here I am 18 years later. So
for mine, I also come from a family of teachers, so I like to say that I grew up in school, which everybody does, but I spent all of my summers and all the teacher planning days always in a school, whether I was with my mom or my aunt or my grandma, who was a bookkeeper at the high school. And I actually grew up pretty close to here. I grew up in Interlaken, but when it got time for my brother and I to come to high school, QI, as a school, existed, but it didn't have the ACE program yet. So my family, we actually moved counties so my brother and I could do the IB program, which is really, really similar to ACE. So we did that. Both he and I went to University of Florida. We both graduated with linguistics degrees, and I minored in anthropology, but admittedly, the best thing to do with a linguistics degree is to then go to grad school, which at the time I couldn't afford, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. But there was an opening at the high school I had ended up going to for a teaching assistant in a special education classroom, so doing really all of the core subjects. So I applied for that and I absolutely fell in love with it, decided to go ahead and get my teaching certifications, and I started in the world of special education. One of my best friends who lived in New York City then invited me to come up there and visit her school. And while I was there, I found out that they had a program that if I taught for them for a couple years, they'd pay for me to get my master's in teaching. So I decided to go up there and do that. And just this past summer, I really missed being home. So I decided to move back home to Florida. And then I ended up here when Mr. Shryock actually left earlier this year. And Miss Hodges, who is a very old friend of my family, called me and she's like, "Hey, didn't you study something to do with human geography and social studies in college?" I was like, "Yes, I did." So that's how I ended up here. And it's just been really a fantastic stroke of luck for me.
Yeah, I have kind of a similar story. I think, I come from a family of teachers. My mom is a teacher. My brother's a teacher. And I have aunts and uncles, and it goes way back. So I'd always kind of thought I might end up being an educator. I, went to college and I did the history degree and got a bachelor's in history and got out. I wasn't 100% sure exactly what I was going to do. I kind of had a year or two of floundering a little bit and decided to go back to college to get my certificate, my teaching certificate. Went through a program for that. And then I was actually an educational aide for a little while, for a short time, about half a year at Doctor's Inlet Elementary. And I kind of came to the realization I really like this. And that was back in 2009. It was really hard to get a job that particular year because the economy was hurting and everything. And I didn't really have much hope of getting a job. And I heard about this little school out in Florahome, Florida. I wasn't sure exactly where it was. And I came by to drop off my application. And right then and there, Miss Buckles was actually the principal at that time. And she was at the school and she said, "Okay, well, just come on in. We'll do an interview now." And so I was like, okay. And I did the interview, and then I got a call back a day or two later, and she offered me a job as a language arts teacher. So that's how I ended up here. I've been here ever since. It's been, 13 or 14 years. I think me and Mr. Rothschild started at the same time. So.
Same story with Miss Buckles. I walked in. She's like, "Oh, do you teach math?" I said, "Yes." And she says, "Rothschild? Didn't your daddy teach out at St. John's Community College for 32 years? He taught me and my kids." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She's like, "Why don't you come in my office?"
Yeah. So she's great.
Your reputation precedes you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll kind of wrap up here because we're getting close to the start of school today. What advice or recommendations would you have for students new to QI?
Stick with it. It gets better. It doesn't get easier. But the benefits of having a degree here, a high school degree here, ACE diploma, will serve you well if you plan on going to college. and also ease up some expenses on your parents, because I know my daughter graduated from here.
I think mine would be just talk to people, whether that's like your fellow students, but especially if you feel like you're struggling, talk to your teachers. A lot of us are what happens when y'all grow up. Like, we were also the nerdy kids who did like all the advanced classes. So we kind of know the tips and tricks to like manage going through like middle school and high school and taking the advanced classes and balancing all of that. And we want to help. So just talk to us. We're not that scary.
Yeah, I think it's really just a matter of sticking with it, working hard. You're getting a great education here. This is something special, and it's going to really prepare you for what's ahead, especially, if you're going to college or going into the workforce, whatever you choose to do. So just hang with it.
Very good. Well, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners before we sign off today? Alrighty. Thanks for being here. Listeners, if you like the podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast so we can catch future episodes, and be sure to give QI Roberts Student Government a follow on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on future happenings around QI. If you like the podcast, please rate and review us on your podcast player of choice and share with a friend. Thank you, Knights, and remember, excellence in all endeavors.